The Little Things is a good movie. I've watched some reviews online, and I've seen the Rotten Tomatoes score. I think this movie is getting an unnecessary amount of hate from critics and fans. I hope to provide a clearer perspective of the story and what I think the film's overall themes are, while also sharing my favorite moments. Let's begin with the opening scene. We have Tina Salvatore, played by Sofia Vassilieva, and she is listening to a song performed by the B-52s called Rome. This has nothing to do with anything, I just found my new favorite song. I love this opening sequence because the movie immediately puts us in the perspective of this character. She's young and she's happy, singing along to herself, when all of a sudden, things take a turn for the worst when some strange creep begins to stalk her. She pulls into the parking lot of an empty diner on the side of the highway. When she got out of her car, I said to myself, I bet you the diner is closed. And sure enough, the diner was closed. Usually you know these things when you notice there's no lights on around the place. But anyways, I wouldn't have gotten out of my car to pull into no diner that you can tell is not open. But realistically, they say you don't know what you would do in a panic situation until it happens to you. So I don't know. But then we get a glimpse of this creep as he begins stalking the girl. But then, all of a sudden, a semi-truck comes along, and now I'm thinking, how is she going to make it across the field and make it to that truck? But sure enough, the girl makes it across the field, intercepts the truck, falls to her knees, and then the scene fades to black. And you want to know what I was thinking after experiencing all of that? I was intrigued. After that opening sequence, I was emotionally invested, which made me excited for the rest of the movie. I think the point of the opening scene is not only to put the viewer in the girl's perspective, but showcase how quickly an innocent situation can turn tragic. I thought the following scene had a nice bit of misdirection. Immediately following the opening sequence events, the movie dupes its audience into thinking that Denzel's character, Joe Deacon, investigates some glass shard trails left behind from the crime scene. But, however, Deacon's investigation isn't essential.
Half our take is from the interstate. You drive by, you look up.
Not exactly a happy meal.
Come to find out, he's a deputy sheriff, and he's nowhere near the crime scene. Deacon is actually attending to a small vandalism call at a local diner. Now, the part of the movie where the sheriff asked Deacon to pick up forensic evidence from his old precinct felt contrived.
This is a DA problem, Captain, not ours.
Oh no, it's our problem. No evidence, no conviction. I got nobody else.
Bullshit!
I think the writer, John Lee Hancock, could have created a different scenario for Deacon to get from location A to B. Once Joe arrives at his old precinct, his former colleagues greet him by voicing their opinion. Joe has a tarnished reputation. Some know the truth, and some have an idea of the truth. The movie slowly reveals a secret that the main character is hiding. The memories of Deacon's past events flood his mind throughout the film. Deacon is sucked back into the detective life by the precinct's new lead, Detective Jim Baxter, played by Rami Malek. Baxter took Deacon's place after Deacon suffered a divorce and a triple bypass due to stressing out over a previous case. Baxter is eager to catch the person responsible for the current homicide cases. There was a sequence of events regarding Baxter that stood out to me. In one scene, Baxter's partner, Detective Jamie Estrada, played by Natalie Morales, tells Baxter that a family wants to speak with a detective regarding their missing daughter.
We got a corpse, and it's still missing persons.
What I think happened here was Baxter already had a lot on his mind, and he had no time to slow down and worry about something besides his current case. Later on, Baxter glimpses at a missing person flyer of the girl he ignored. Later, he goes to the family's home to conduct an interview. The family shows Baxter a videotape of their daughter and then tells him that their daughter always wore a red beret. Baxter immediately feels guilty for initially ignoring the family and vows that he will find their daughter. It's at this moment where I think Baxter begins to go on his downward spiral. He unknowingly begins his journey on going down a similar path, that of Joe Deacon. Deacon and Baxter don't like each other first, but I think what ultimately brings them together is their eagerness to catch the criminals and bring an end to the madness. However, Deacon knows the path Baxter is going on far too well. Deacon tells Baxter that once you take on a case, the victim belongs to you. You're their angel.
They're your lifelong responsibility, Jimmy. You own them. You own them.
My favorite line in the film is when Baxter asks Deacon if he believes in God, and Deacon responds with,
When I see a sunrise or thunderstorm or dew on the ground, yes, I think there's a God. When I see all this, I think he's long past giving a shit.
Deacon said my sentiments exactly. However, I do think that dew on the ground line is a bit weird. Was he talking about Mountain Dew or dog shit? I have no idea. Now the fun begins with Jared Leto. I do think that Jared Leto has the best performance in the film. For as little screen time as he gets, he steals the show. Jared Leto plays Albert Sparma, the prime suspect in Deacon and Baxter's investigation. But here's the kicker. Albert Sparma is the prime suspect based on a hunch. There is no evidence to prove that Sparma had anything to do with the murders. The only reason Sparma's a prime suspect is because he works at the appliance store that was supposed to service one of the victims' refrigerators. Sparma does have priors, but they were only simple assaults. I think what initiated Deacon's suspicion of Sparma was Sparma's attitude and awkward behavior. One of my favorite scenes is when Deacon tails Sparma on the highway, but Sparma toys with Deacon, making a fool out of him. This scene echoes the events from the opening sequence. During the interaction between Deacon and Sparma, Deacon stretches over a few miles ahead and waits for Sparma, but Sparma's car is nowhere in sight. Deacon drives back, but Sparma is on the other side of the road now. After a brief game of cat and mouse, Sparma proves to Deacon that he is no mouse.
How's the trunk space?
Another nice moment is when the detectives take Sparma to the station for questioning, and Tina is there to identify who stalked her that night. Sparma and Tina cross paths. I didn't know what was going to happen. Deacon begins taunting Sparma. Sparma antagonizes Deacon, which forces him to lose his temper. The detectives realize they have nothing on Sparma, so their only hope is for Tina to identify him. After going through some mugshots, Tina comes across Sparma's, but she isn't sure if he's the one who stalked her that night. Tina requests to see Sparma in person, but the detectives realize that even if she IDs him, Her testimony is dismissive because she saw him enter the station in cuffs when they had no evidence to hold him. So, now it's back to square one.
Thank you, Tina.
The one scene I did think was a little stupid was when Deacon and Baxter come up with a plan to search Sparma's apartment illegally. Baxter calls Sparma and tells him to meet him at a bar. Sparma leaves his apartment while Deacon goes to search.
He comes back, I'll hit the horn twice.
That's a stupid idea. Why didn't Baxter go to the bar and bullshit around with Sparma to give Deacon more than enough time to search the apartment? I don't know. The funny part is when Sparma calls 911 for an officer down at his residence. Deacon hears the sirens, which forces him to leave the apartment. But before he does, he finds newspaper clippings of the cases he is investigating underneath Sparma's floor. One of the newspaper clippings brings back an old memory of Deacon's, so that strikes a nerve. After Deacon escapes climbing over the roof and down to an alleyway, Baxter asks him if he found a red beret.
Got a box full of knickknacks and souvenirs.
By any chance, did you see a red beret?
Red beret?
Yeah, Rhonda Rathman was wearing one when she disappeared.
Give me 5 more minutes, I can find out for you.
Which means he found nothing. Deacon and Baxter begin tailing Sparma, but Sparma sends both Deacon and Baxter on a wild goose chase. One night, while Deacon and Baxter are staking out Sparma's apartment, Deacon goes to a nearby corner store to get some batteries for his watch, which was set up earlier. While Deacon is away, the payphone rings, which was a nice setup. There's some tension there. Sparma appears out of nowhere and startles Baxter, which felt like another contrived moment to me. Who was calling that payphone? Because it wasn't Sparma. Sparma and Baxter just happened to be at the wrong place at the right time. Coincidence. Sparma convinces Baxter that he knows where the missing girl is and that he'll take Baxter to her, but his buddy, Deacon, can't join the party. I think it makes sense to call Baxter an idiot for going along with Sparma's games, but you have to understand that Baxter is anxious to catch the killer, and he wanted to bring closure to the families and his conscience. So, as stupid as this situation seems, if we put ourselves in Baxter's position, I think his decision does make some logical sense. I mean, he did think about it for a while. As Baxter and Sparma drive away, Deacon spots them and immediately begins pursuit. Once we get to the ending, it does feel like it's trying to be like Seven, directed by David Fincher. The whole criminal provokes the detective, so the detective kills the criminal out of wrath type thing. It worked in Seven, but here it's different because Sparma is an innocent man killed by a detective who couldn't do his job right. Even though Sparma provoked Baxter, Baxter is a detective. You would think he would have more common sense than that. I like how the scene builds with Sparma revealing that he lied about the missing girl and that he never killed anybody in his life.
We can get in the car and we can drive straight home, maybe even stop for tacos.
I didn't know where this scene was going until Sparma started antagonizing Baxter. Don't ever talk about a person's family because you'll be crossing a significant line.
What kind of a father are you? How can you protect those two beautiful daughters when you can't even begin to help one of those poor girls or their families? There's nothing you can do about it.
Deacon finally shows up, but it's too late. And that's when his past mistakes flash before his eyes. A flashback that I think is a little silly and poorly executed shows Deacon during his detective days. He's standing behind some bushes, he hears a noise off in the distance, his partners startle him, Deacon tells them to be quiet, a noise in the night shakes Deacon, he turns around and opens fire into the darkness. And then out comes a half-naked girl with a bullet wound in her torso. She falls to the ground, dead. I think the flashback works to explain Deacon's madness, but I also believe it's a tad overdramatic. The other reveal is that Deacon and his colleagues all covered up what Deacon had done. The coroner, a friend of Deacon's, lies on the autopsy report and claims that the girl died from multiple stab wounds. The coroner takes the bullet out of the girl and ends up turning it into a trinket to remind herself of what she and Deacon did. Once Deacon sees what Baxter has done, Deacon doesn't hesitate to console Baxter and give him specific instructions on how to get rid of Sparma's body. Deacon goes back to Sparma's apartment to clear the place out. Deacon also takes Sparma's car to the hood and throws the keys to some guys on the corner. I thought that moment was racist as fuck, but I digress. Later, Deacon returns to the scene of the crime and says the trailer line about the little things.
It's the little things, Jimmy. It's the little things that rip you apart. It's the little things that get you caught.
I swear I feel like the trailer inadvertently gives everything away. Baxter now has to live with the guilt of what he did. But the question is, will he go mad like Deacon? Deacon makes sure that that doesn't happen. Sometime later, Deacon sends Baxter a note saying no angels along with a large red beret, which I think might help clear Baxter's conscience and forcing him to believe that he got the right guy. Deacon begins burning all of Sparma's belongings along with a variety pack of berets that is missing a red one. It's evident that Deacon bought a package of berets and sent Baxter the red one. This movie's ending is cold and miserable because they never catch the killer, and Baxter ends up killing an innocent man. I think the moral of the story is that it's your job to keep your wits about you as a homicide detective or law enforcement officer in general. It's easy to lose control when under pressure, and how can you not when you have to be an angel for all of the victims that cross your path. In one moment, when Deacon goes back to an earlier crime scene, a landlady asks him how he gets used to the smell of decay. And his response is,
If you're lucky, you don't get used to it.
I think Deacon is implying that you only get used to the smell if you lose your mind, which he already has at this point. He didn't want to see Baxter go down that same path, so he lies to him, believing that he is sparing him from the guilt. Throughout the movie, you see small hints that Baxter's job is affecting his family. I wish the director had played up on that a bit more and fleshed it out to give us more depth about Baxter's life. One touching scene is when Deacon and Baxter are having breakfast. Deacon meets Baxter's wife and 2 daughters. I thought it was a pretty emotional moment that reflected the innocent nature of the victims. It could be anybody. Just like the victims, Baxter's children are innocent, and it's his job to protect them. But what happens when you can't? What kind of psychological toll do you have to endure to ensure justice for the victims and their families? I can only imagine. Overall, this movie isn't perfect, but I did enjoy the ride. Here's how it goes. The Little Things, I didn't love it. It's far from garbage. It's not great. It's better than okay. and I more than like it. I thought it was a good movie that had a solid cast who gave solid performances. The story had an emotional core, even though I felt a little more could have been done with it to make it more compelling. That's all I have to say.
When I'm with him, nobody dies.
Hey, get up. Get up, man.